review Allison and NXIVM. I've listened to the first two, and it's a little bit of projection, but she seems to like to blame everyone else for the fact she went to NXIVM, but herself. And we hear how Allison is in this one, and what Ramirez was like, and I just found it fascinating.
Right, so like all of us fed into that, all of us believed that, and all of us supported each other in that.
Taking these nude photos as a group almost became routine, but the individual pictures, the ones Keith had India and Allison's other slaves take when he was with them alone, these pictures went one step further. They often involved the women lying in a very vulnerable position, faces visible, legs spread, genitals on full display. These images would become trophies for Keith, a perverse collection of photographs he kept on hand.
And my understanding, the assignment never involved him touching them or him having any type of sexual interaction with them outside of them being unclothed and him taking a picture.
I can't spell Ramirez.
From Campsite Media and CBC, this is Allison after NXIVM. From CBC's Uncover, I'm Natalie Robinette. This is episode 3, The Assignment. So in November 2016, something pivotal happens. Keith's long-term girlfriend, Pam Caffritz, dies. Keith is distraught.
Keith wanted to have like a huge memorial service for her.
But this wasn't just a traditional memorial service.
He like wanted us to create stations that represented like different ways in which Pam expressed herself in the world.
Keith wanted to set up an exhibition of sorts, a living shrine filled with Pam's belongings.
And like made me in charge of making basically like a Pam museum.
All of a sudden, Allison has a huge new role to play. She starts sifting through Pam's clothes, touching the decades of incidentals this woman's life has left behind, gathering the items so she can recreate Pam, Keith's favorite girlfriend, in different scenarios.
You saw like her suits and like her collars and like this was what she looked like when she...
So you basically helped him be the crazy lunatic he was. Well, thanks, Allison.
She was doing this case and like this is where she was when she, you know, these were her pens and like it was like that.
So for this
kind of creepy that she went along with it. Okay.
memorial, which took place, Allison says, in a big ballroom, Allison and other NXIVM followers dress up mannequins in Pam's clothes. Just imagine looking at these mannequins, like the ones you'd see in a clothing store, except here they're set up in different positions, with this dead woman's clothes on them. And Allison was in charge of it. It's a bizarre tribute, and also a pretty revealing one, because it seems as though Keith is having Allison stage the life she's about to inhabit. With Pam gone, Allison is now stepping up as one of Keith's main girlfriends, one of his most important partners. And with that, she has an important role to play in DOS. Keith told Allison and the other first 7 DOS members, called First Line Masters, to replicate with their own slaves what they'd been doing in DOS. And what they'd been doing in DOS was pretty extreme. Here's what Allison's life looked like at this point.
So I woke up at 5 a.m. and I got out of bed right away and I took a 1-minute cold shower. I remember once I was working on a TV show and I had to take a cold shower and the water was so cold in New York City that it froze the conditioner into my hair. And so I showed up on set and the hairdresser was like going to do my hair and she was like, "What is in your hair?" And that was just standard every morning. And I waited to weigh myself until after the 1-minute cold shower so that my body could settle and I could get an accurate read on my weight. When I go to bed, I always had to text my schedule for the next day to Keith asking permission if that schedule was suitable for him. And part of that was I would write down everything I was going to do and at what time I was going to do it, and then how it related to a character trait that I was trying to build in myself. So like discipline or compassion or care or curiosity or commitment, or like, so every single thing that I did was related to some purpose of my character building kind of a thing. And it was literally like to the minute. And then I would make myself breakfast, which was always kaboka squash, plain non-fat Greek yogurt, a little bit of honey, a little bit of almond butter, and maybe some blueberries.
Lunch was a salad. Dinner was gloss noodles with kale, jalapeno peppers, and more kabocha squash. Allison ate so much squash during this time that her skin actually changed color.
Oh my God. Allison, how did you cope? You know, ow. I've got pleurisy at the minute.
My mom was like, you need to not eat so much squash. Her hand was like a light orange all the time.
Mindy Mack, Allison's mom.
She said, oh, it's just because that's all I eat. And I said, well...
So you're blaming the industry you're in for making your skin a different colour. But this man branded you, woman. This man branded you. I can't believe I'm coming on camera. I can't believe she's saying this stuff. It's like she's blaming the industry, if you know what I mean.
You probably ought to have some protein, and it was really difficult for me. It was a tightrope walk because I didn't want to push her away. And she was right on the edge all the time of, don't push me, because I'll be gone.
But Allison was a wreck.
She was cruel to her family, control freak. You've got to treat her a certain way and all that, and you probably still have to now. I mean, she's getting this podcast and she's telling everyone else, she hasn't learned by what she did.
Already gone. Because she was asking Keith for permission for every single thing, including texting Keith for approval before she was allowed to eat anything.
So when I became a part of DOS, one of the commitments was that I would stay under a certain weight, under 107 pounds. He wanted me between 105 and 107 pounds.
Allison is 5'5", so 105 pounds is significantly underweight for someone of her height. To achieve this absurd goal weight, Keith put her on a 500 calorie a day diet, less than a third of what's recommended for an adult woman. Basically a starvation regimen.
Yeah, because he's trying to... That's how it works in the cult. They starve you so your senses are disfigured and you're not able to make rational choice, and that's how it begins. All the time.
I fasted every day. I was running 6 miles a day. I was like really into half marathons, so I was running at least 6 miles on 500 calories, and I was very into yoga, so I was doing yoga. I did yoga every morning for about 6 years. I used to chew so much gum because I was so fucking hungry all the time and so anxious, like so on edge all the time. And I only chewed cinnamon gum because cinnamon gum doesn't have aspartame in it. So I was still being healthy. But the inside of my mouth was raw from all of the gum, because the cinnamon gum would like fry your mouth, and I'd have like an entire pack in my mouth at one time. I obsessively chewed gum and drank sparkling water. I fasted every Monday. That was my holy day or whatever, so I wouldn't eat the whole day on Monday, which is crazy because it was actually like a day and a half because I would stop eating.
It sounds like she has this podcast to just spew all her therapy out on people. Yeah, not really an excellent podcast, but you go over and watch it if you want to accommodate a story like that. But it's interesting, the NXIVM cult, how these fully grown women
at 5 o'clock on Sunday
take zero responsibility.
Tuesday morning, and I always had these huge scarves because I was always always cold. I was so thin that I could touch my fingers together around my waist. I mean, I was anorexic.
Oh, poor you.
Many of these women in NXIVM had body issues, and I've often wondered if that may have been part of why NXIVM appealed to them in the first place.
In the NXIVM community, there was a hyperfixation on weight. Everybody was trying to be skinny, which is so ironic because Keith is fat. Because he believed that it was better for your health and better for your energy work.
You wouldn't like to be that.
Very, very, very thin.
Fat?
In NXIVM, being dangerously thin was not seen as an illness. It was a virtue. Perhaps it made these women, many of whom had money and pedigrees, feel like disordered eating was okay or even good. If you had anorexia or bulimia in the past, on the outside, and your family members or friends were on your case about getting healthy, it was satisfying to know they were wrong all along. Calorie restriction was now praised as discipline, as self-control. Or maybe it was a chicken and egg situation, where Keith instilled ideas that resulted in these destructive behaviors. Whichever way it went, there's no doubt that Keith benefited from having Allison on a 500 calorie a day diet for 3 years, for having all these women underfed, underslept, and physically exhausted. And this was all only part of Keith's plan. The most insidious stuff, to me, were the mind games.
Part of the commitment was that, like, you had to love your master beyond everything, in the face of everything, and part of how you did that was, like, every morning you meditated on the goodness of your master.
I can just imagine Allison waking up at 5 a.m., having to sit down, maybe on a plush pillow, maybe cross-legged, and shut her eyes, focus on her breathing, and meditate on the goodness of Keith. With every breath she would inhale, thinking about all the ways Keith was pure, the embodiment of love, and exhale, release any negative feelings she might have towards Keith. When I tried to meditate the night Allison told me this, Keith's face kept popping into my head. Like Keith had found a way to slip a piece of stained paper under the door of my brain. And that paper just steeps and stains and starts to wrap around every crevice of your mind, covering it with him, like when the paper wins in a game of rock, paper, scissors. Every single thing Allison and the other first-line masters did was framed as an act of care or service or denial, all for Keith.
What could you do that day that was an act of care for your master? So how could you make their life easier? How could you make their world better? Like go grocery shopping for him or pick up his favorite chocolates and bring them to, volleyball.
Jesus Christ, what a baby.
Helping each other get through their issues, and so that it was easier for Keith was like a way, like an act of care, basically just doing whatever you could to make his life better. The denial was like self-denial. So it was like, I'm going to give up something that I love in honor of my master. So it was like, I won't eat refined sugar in honor of my master. So anytime there was any dessert or anything sweet around, I was not participating.
Their commitment to Keith took on another physical manifestation, a perverse wedding ring of sorts.
We all had to wear a piece of permanent jewelry somewhere. I wore a belly chain because I could keep it on when I was acting. And I was so thin, and it was a way for me to maintain my weight.
The idea was, if Allison, quote-unquote, ate too much, the belly chain would start to dig into her stomach. But Allison had a desire to be the best, to be the most committed to her master, to be really hardcore. So she took the belly chain a step further. As a form of punishment, she began wearing a type of cilice, a restrictive undergarment designed to remind the wearer of their devotion to God, or in this case, to Keith.
So it comes back, it's like the days of mortification from like nuns and monks, how they used to wear like burlap sacks because it was uncomfortable and itchy, like a way of physical mortification. So a cilice was like another form of that where you, it's like a strap, and the inside of the strap is sewn on, they're like giant staples, like this, like pieces of metal that go like this with little spikies on the end, and they're sewn on the inside of the strap, and then you wrap that around your body. So it's kind of poking you, like stabbing you, all day. And so I used to wear that around my waist, like under my clothes, if I overate, as like a punishment.
At this point, Keith was not just Allison's coach or business partner. He was her sexual partner, her guru, her god. And so when he wanted Allison and the other first DOS members' dedication made even more permanent, it seemed almost logical. So they would be the first women, but not the last. One day, Allison was in Albany when she got a call.
It was lunchtime, and they were like, the guy's here, we've all done, he's waiting for you. And so I was like, okay.
So Allison gets in her car on her lunch break and drives to one of the DOS slaves' house. She walks inside.
She had like this day room area, and there was like a couch, and I like laid on the couch, and everybody was sucking on lollipops.
Lollipops, a burst of sugar to make sure no one fainted. Most of the other first-line slaves are there, including Nikki Klein, the Canadian actress. Some of the women are watching TV in the other room. Allison lies down on the couch. She's wearing a pair of baggy pants. A body modification artist, a man she can only identify as a tattoo artist from Arizona, sits down beside her.
I think Nikki was talking to him, but we're just this part of the, a sorority, I think is what we said. And we want to do this as part of our sorority initiation thing. I pulled my pants down to show my hip, which is where it was. And then he branded me, and I he put the tape over it and gave me a lollipop, and I buttoned up my pants and went back and taught the rest of the intensive.
Allison carries on like normal, but her body is in shock. She's just been branded with a cauterizing pen, without any sort of pain medication or numbing cream.
My body was like shaking, in shock, obviously my body was still trembling. But I was so good at cutting that off and just focusing on what I was doing, and I'm just not going to feel this right now. I'm just going to dissociate completely and be somewhere different. I don't know when or where I developed that survival mechanism, but when other women would say, that's really painful or whatever, I was like, what do you mean? It's fine. It's just what you did. It was just like another day. And so the callousness by which I handled that and handled myself in that is the same callousness that I had with the other girls.
And Allison is being manipulated by Keith too, in a callous way. Allison has never talked to anyone about this publicly. But for about a year, from 2015 to 2016, Keith was having sex with Allison every day.
In the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, you'd have a meeting, didn't matter, he'd come interrupt the meeting, you'd do...
Keith framed this sexual coercion as energy work, part of her healing. Remember, Allison told Keith that she struggled with her sexuality, that there were things that happened when she was a kid that weren't okay. But through the brainwashing of NXIVM, this sick piece of paper folded around Allison's mind.
Okay, so Allison, I've never heard this about Allison before, as past trauma. Now, I didn't know that. So, he's targeted her for her vulnerability, and that's what he's played on. I take it back, Allison, I'm sorry.
Mind like a glove. Keith programmed Allison and the other women to ignore their gut. Now, any reluctance Allison felt to having sex with Keith was positioned as her fault. To hit this point home, after each time they had sex, Keith would debrief with Allison at length.
An orgasm or any type of physical reaction that your body is having when you're having an intimate experience with somebody. It's not always an orgasm, but it's just different, physical experiences, right? And so he would take ownership and responsibility for what was happening in my body and what was happening for me emotionally, so that it all came back to him being the source of these experiences that I was having, right? And then it was no other man will be able to do this for you.
And he's playing on that fact that he can give her the climax that no other man out there, because he's a god, you know, he's playing himself as this figure in her life, and he's locked up now. I'm not sure how long for. How long did memories go? Let's look it up quickly. Sorry. I can't even spell his name next to him. Get in prison. Wish I just told me, but hey, I'll have to read it. I always read Yahoo, they're very good news source. 120 years he got in 2019. So that's quite 6 years ago now. You know, I didn't know it was that long ago. So she goes to prison, she must have went to prison.
More women, not just India, so he can heal them too. So Keith viewed Allison as a sort of project. She was not high up in the organization, but she was a rising star.
That's Allison.
And her commitment to Keith and the lengths she was willing to go for him set her apart. There's no getting around the fact that within DOS, Allison was one of the most extreme members, and one of the most, if not the most, extreme master. She became a very accomplished recruiter, racking up several slaves, starting with India Oxenberg. And she was a very demanding taskmaster. It's something she's still slightly defensive about.
Nothing that I did with my slaves wasn't something that I had already done with our group.
But by all accounts, Allison meted out punishments to her slaves with force.
Most of the time it was like, okay, 1 minute cold shower for everybody in the group, including me. And so I would take my standard 1 minute cold shower, and then I would add another minute. Standing in the cold for like a certain amount of time, an hour, yeah, something like that. In the middle of the night, planks. So holding a plank for a period of time, for like a minute or 2 minutes.
She believes she's in charge of a badass group of empowered women. An Allison who's competitive, who wants so deeply to be liked, to do a good job and obey her master, sees these women as a way for her to succeed. The harder she pushes her slaves, the better she sees herself reflected in Keith, her god's eyes.
I don't think this lady has any remorse like Keith. I think if anything, she feels like, well, this happened to me, I'm a victim, but you inflicted a lot of your work. You were one of the main leaders of NXIVM. You weren't just a slave. You was a slave, but you weren't like the other women.
There are no boundaries she won't nudge past to get there, including sexual ones.
My experience of his perversion was him teaching me how to be okay with my sexual experience.
Sorry. Wait, that went now. Yeah, I was a bit shocked when I heard all that, because, she branded people and things of that nature. She made these girls get cold showers, she beat them. Have some remorse, woman. So weird to me.
The Canadian actress. Some of the women are watching TV in the other room. Allison lies down on the couch. She's wearing a pair of baggy pants. And someone else started performing oral sex on her. After it was over, Allison says,
way, push yourself, love harder, love more, And all the while it's this fucked up sexual fantasy. But I'm just Yeah.
In a twisted way, Allison had come to believe the sexual exploitation of NXIVM was a form of empowerment. Not everyone took part in the sexual side of things, and some did more than others. In Nikki's slave line, there was a lot of reported sexual activity. In Lawrence Salzman's slave line, there was none. She would not have any of her slaves go see Keith. But Allison did, which is where the assignment comes in. Allison gives the assignment to several of her slaves, and one of those women has an experience that should have set off even more alarm bells than any of the others. Here's what happened. Allison gave a slave of hers, a woman identified only as Nicole, the assignment to do whatever Keith says. So Keith summoned Nicole in the middle of the night. He blindfolded her, took her to another location, and told her to get on a table, nude. And someone else started performing oral sex on her. After it was over, Allison says Nicole came back to Allison's house.
She came back and had indentations on her face from the mask. And I was like, are you okay? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, what happened? And she told me, and I was like, fuck. You're really brave. That was all I could say. I was like, I don't think I would have had the guts to do that. Like, you're really brave. She was like, yeah, that was really brave.
I reckon he tortured these
Allison
women.
says on the inside, she was shocked.
Like, blew my mind. But how naive for me to be surprised at that, given the nature of how the disgusting text messages that he would send to me, and the ways that he wanted all of us to take pictures of our bodies, close-up pictures of our bodies to send to him. Like, what did I think he was doing?
It's really hard to understand how Allison could have possibly thought that Keith was just taking naked pictures of her slaves. That nothing sexual was happening.
I'll read this out to you.
It's very, naive in some ways to, think that it was...
Incredibly naive. Incredibly naive. But it also just shows you what I thought of. I trusted that Keith would not do anything.
Allison didn't...
I'll read this out because this is interesting about NXIVM.
Had
Brian NXIVM Raniere's weapon of choice was his small group of girls, namely Utenaria, Keith, and most importantly, Catherites. But as NXIVM grew, so too did what prosecutors referred to during the trial as Ramirez inner circle. There was a Mac, Bochi, Catrix, Utenaria, Keith, and Bronfman, but also Lawrence Salzman, the daughter of Perfect Nancy, a worn, frail woman with dark circles under her eyes, Nikki Klein, the saucer-eyed blonde Canadian from Battlestar Galactica. Okay. And remember the one who's in the uniform and she's one of the army in Battlestar Galactica. And probably a pretty daughter of the most powerful. She's the daughter of a probable Mexican who was devoted to Rene, and she offered him her teenage daughter Loris as his DOS slave and virgin successor. No, how old was she? See, she did a lot more than just, she crossed a barrier, big one, with abuse of women.
Indentations on her face from the mask. And I was like, are you okay? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, what happened? And she told me, and I was like, fuck. You're really brave.
Sorry, my reading's not great today. I'm still recovering.
You're really brave.
I'm sorry, I'm online, but I just wanted to talk about this.
Allison says on the inside, she was shocked.
Blew my mind. but how naive for me to be surprised at that, given the nature of how the disgusting text messages that he would send to me, and the ways that he wanted all of us to take pictures of our bodies, close-up pictures of our bodies to send to him. Like, what did I think he was doing?
Claire and Sarah were some of Keith's earliest backers and his most ardent supporters. It was Claire's jet that Allison flew back on to meet Keith from Vancouver for the first time. And since the early 2000s, estimates suggest the Bronfmans had poured about $100 million into NXIVM. A lot of that has gone into paying for legal fees against various anti-NXIVM detractors. And Keith spent a reported $66 million playing the commodities market with it too. Yes, you heard that right. And there were immigration fees to be paid as well. Because as we've already mentioned, NXIVM had large Mexican and Canadian contingents. Keith wanted several of these foreign members to live in Albany. One of them was Nikki Klein, who we mentioned last episode.
Nikki was another one who didn't really like me very much.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, love.
I was too much for her. Like, she was, like, didn't like how performative I was, and didn't like how outgoing I was, and loud I was, and sort of boisterous and gregarious and stuff.
Nikki is another of the frontline dust slaves, one of those first 8. Now Allison and her are spending a lot of time together in dust.
You sense there's a sort of bitchiness to this podcast, and I'm just a bit... And it's me. But that's all for me, and if you want to go and watch the rest of it, there's another... oh God, I'd spare your life, and I'll come back on next time. Alright, take care now. Bye.